Welcome in. Things have been going interestingly here at the Kimerix project. Thanks to everyone that have been liking, subscribing, commenting, the usual YouTube shenanigans. I know we've been focusing on Kill Team. It is still a mainstay rules system that my friends and I enjoy, but the plan was always to add 40k back into the mix eventually, as well as potentially other tabletop games. And with everything Games Workshop has been showing us for the upcoming 10th edition release, our interest grows and grows. So let's take a look through it all and see what's what. Real quick, know that this perspective is coming from a group that is just getting back into the Games Workshop system. We played the 3rd, 4th, and 5th edition of 40k back in the day. We didn't leave for anything to do with the updates, just adulting. Recently, I found an opportunity to get back in through Kill Team. My friends and I still love the speed and gameplay of this rule set and will continue to play, but we just can't outrun the lure of large-scale combat. We were originally planning to start up in 9th, but then the rumors started. 10th was around the corner, a potential full rework of systems in play. Systems that were almost dauntingly elaborate for us returning players. So we decided to wait. And I gotta say, knowing what I've seen from 9th and seeing the adjustments 10th is bringing, we're in. From everything shown, the adjustments seem to be bringing the conciseness of rules closer to what we have come to love about Kill Team. And watching as they announced that all rules and army lists will be free, extraordinary. Let's take a look back at what has been shown so far and quickly go over it from the perspective of a returning player. Again, we were planning on joining 9th. This was a massive task. I managed to get all the books on sale from my local store, and while thumbing through them, all I saw was a journey of 1,000 miles ahead of me. All the stratagems, skills, abilities, upgrades, artifacts, sub-factions, not just of the team I was interested in, but all of them. Compared to Kill Team limiting most of these functions down to a small handful of options, 9th felt like it would take years to get all the facets down in a way where I could feel confident in a tournament setting. Looking around the room, seeing the other teams, being able to guess their functions, being able to plan my strategies, 9th felt like I would easily fall into so many traps and lose early. And this is from a person who has some tournament and casual experience within 40k. I could only imagine what a brand new player would feel like walking in, fresh out of their local hobby store. Even with some of the online ways of being able to check all the different teams and units, the vastness of information was still there. With Kill Team, those same online places make the game feel much more digestible. Only a handful of abilities and equipment to get used to, and you're good to go. Even though I still have errors in some of my videos, I fear to think about the egregious mistakes I would make trying to bring you all battle reports from 9th. So when Games Workshop not only came out and said that a lot of the needless excess was going to be either cut out or simplified, but that also you would be able to access all army lists and unit rules for free online, chef's kiss. This feels like something we've wanted. I do love me some good books and physical things, so having them say the datasheets will also be released as inexpensive packs of cards feels good. They did eventually release a codex roadmap to show some of the planned updates to the initial free release. I'm hoping they don't shy away from the element of the game that is based in ease of access. Lowering the bar of entry for new players to be able to look at the rules and decide for themselves how they want to play is much easier when the potential new players can more effectively find those rules. We'll have to see what happens when this all starts back up. My hope is that there will still be a good way to access these rules digitally in an effective way. Being able to pull them up on my phone or tablet always feels more preferable in the heat of a match than flipping through pages hoping to find the exact wording I'm looking for. Simplified, not simple, seems to be the mantra. The gist is mostly to streamline. Why have 5 terms for a single function? Why have 30 stratagems when half of them are for specific units you might not use? Or maybe those stratagems might serve better as being part of the unit's passive or activatable abilities on its own. With our group's return to Kill Team, we became distinctly aware of this approach. There is of course still room to simplify, even there. The Wormblade Locust's duelist ability and the Void-Scarred Corsair's bladed stance are the exact same ability. I felt like in this situation, simply calling both abilities the same name would allow players on both sides to immediately understand what is about to happen. I do hope Games Workshop sticks to this approach. They always seem to have the desire to name things after a lore-based term, so we'll see if they can maintain this idea. The simplification also covers selecting an army. Select a faction, select a sub-faction, build an army. From the teams I've played and seen, this kind of already happens. The difference sounds like, at least at first, the information for all the rules behind this will exist in one or maybe two standard sheets of paper. Useful when it comes to finding the rule you need at the right moment. And at Warhammer Fest, they did reveal all the sets of cards that can be bought for the physical side of these, and it did appear that all current codexes are represented. They did combine the Imperial Knights and Chaos Knights into a single group as well. It will be interesting to see how these play out. I was worried at first that my Thousand Sons would be balled up and placed in the catch-all Chaos Space Marines category, as they once were. It's good to see that they will remain unique in their existence. And with the requirement of picking a sub-faction within the choice, the Cabals may return in some form. I really enjoyed seeing the Cabals when I came back to 40k. They sort of teased the mind with possibilities for creating really interesting army lists. And since most of the codexes from 9th did this very thing, the rest of the represented teams should have some similarly fun options. For me though, a part of 9th that I wasn't too keen on were some of the Army of Renowns. These occasionally would be part of the core codex, but sometimes you had to go out of your way and buy whole other books just to get their rules. The benefit with this current approach of using single rules sheets and cards is that they can easily be expanded and adjusted for balance on the digital side of things. I really hope Games Workshop makes this the norm. The amount of people I've seen at the different stores who talk about using third-party apps to fill in this ease of use gap is usually around 90%. There was a minor hint at a new app coming with the launch of 10th when it was initially revealed, but I feel like people glossed over that info. Maybe the announcer misspoke, I'm not too sure. I am curious though about how possible between faction alliance squads will work, or even if it is an option. My plan originally was to run a Thousand Sons army with a single squad of Chaos War Dogs as a Dreadblade detachment from the Knights faction. This idea, from what I can see, is going to be possibly a thing of the past. Understandable, as I imagine it is hard enough to try and balance an individual faction. Giving units the ability to go to the other lists has to be a massive headache, but maybe not. I still love the idea of a squad of giant walking mechs supporting my little armored wizards. The simplification of stratagems piqued my interest as well. Coming from Kill Team, which has one universal stratagem and an average of 8 stratagems per team, the several dozen stratagems 9th offered felt at times unnecessary, almost counterproductive to having a good match. The thing I was always worried about in 40k was how easy it was becoming to turn 1 alpha strike an opponent. Tales of early tournaments in 9th showing that through extreme meta focusing on spending every command point you had in turn 1 to maximize your damage output set some teams up to be overly powerful with all the tools they had access to. As new tournament rules were dropped, this was heavily reined in through the reduction of initial command points. Games Workshop is further adjusting this by giving all teams access to 12 core stratagems and then limiting detachment stratagems to no more than 6. I actually feel like this could be good. They've said they don't want to reduce the depth in the game, so this could also point to individual unit types coming with their own expansive abilities and special effects to keep a bit of that layer intact. It's possible. The few full data cards they've shown have what feel like a normal amount of abilities attached to them, but with things like the new Termagants they revealed, the Skulking Horrors ability is pretty new for them. The old Termagants had a faction-wide common ability only, and some of the benefits Skulking Horrors provides feels like something that would have been considered a command point ability in 9th. Another fun thing I noticed when looking over some of the unit cards are the sheer quantity of keywords added to weapons to give them a more unique feeling. The 9th approach felt like many of the weapons had a full write-up of special abilities described in detail next to them. This lightweight approach feels like the Kill Team method. Have a large list of commonly used keywords in the core rules. Add them to weapons as you see fit for the balance. If the parallels to Kill Team go even further, this appendix of weapons functions won't limit the units. Sometimes weapons have unique abilities attached to them from the unit info card. The Hunter-Killer missile rule on the Rhino shows this with its one-shot rule. I'm really happy with this condensing of common rules. It always feels much better asking your opponent about a unit you aren't familiar with, and after a few keywords and some stats, you have a full understanding of what it does. This drastically improves speed of the game. Another thing that will hopefully help out is the reworked approach to phases. Command into movement, followed by shooting, charge, and fight. 5 phases. 2 more than the hyper-simplified move, shoot, assault phases of 5th. The psychic phase was removed and reworked so that it fits into any of the other phases. A lot of weapons claim they are psychic, so you would just use them in shooting or fighting. The weird boy they showed has an ability that can be used at the end of the movement phase. The librarian has a lifelong squad buff. What is interesting is, I'm not sure psychic tests need to be taken for any of this. Looking at the librarian reveals a possibility that psychic is now its own potential layer for things like damage, defense, as well as ways of shutting things down. Smite having 2 attack modes, and one including hazardous as its keyword, makes it feel like only one of those 2 shots could incur some self-damage. Also, seeing Psychic Hood providing a very solid defensive ability to the unit, rather than a benefit to a Deny the Witch roll, further support this idea. I actually really like this. I know that story-wise it is better to regale your gamer group with that time you could have won a game, but your key psychic ability just wouldn't happen, so all your plans fell apart. When considering competitive play, limiting the amount of truly spiky RNG should be a goal. I doubt 40k, as well as most Games Workshop IPs, will ever be without any RNG. There is just something so alluring about a dice roll. Something tempting about the gamble. But when balancing factions, if one has a game-changing spell that on failure almost guarantees the loss, and that spell is key to the army's whole strategy, it just makes them unfun to play. There will most likely be some psychic shutdown functions from a handful of factions. What we've seen so far sets up play and counterplay really well. Beyond that, the loss of the morale phase actually seems more beneficial when limiting the crushing feeling of defeat after a couple bad rolls. The new term is Battle Shock, and this is done during the command phase at the top of your activation. They also showed that units like the new Tyranid Screamer Killer can cause a Battle Shock test after it shoots a target. With this new rule, instead of losing a bunch of extra units as a ripple effect of damage taken, the unit simply becomes slightly less useful but retains its ability to fight. I like this change for all my low leadership opponents. I also like this as a way to potentially alleviate the caginess that I've seen out of competitive 40k. I've been watching tournaments on the Twitch channel, and many of the games consist of turn after turn of avoiding combat and movement. This is fully understandable in a system where a squad that doesn't fully die out gets punished with further loss of its units as a reward for their tenacity. As a person that normally plays teams with limited amounts of units on the field and high leadership, I am fully okay with this. Giving players the option of attempting Hail Mary strategies earlier than the final turn with limited downside could make for some exciting games. And speaking of the games, one of the best things I've seen out of Games Workshop since I've come back is the approach to using decks of cards, not just for quick access to physical information, but also ways of randomly generating missions. The new Critical Operations cards for Kill Team have been really fun. Looking through the Tempest of War deck showed some really interesting functions. Seeing that there is a mission deck for 10th makes me really happy. Also worried. A big issue with this approach is actually due to Games Workshop not being able to meet the demands of the fans with their production. I was fortunate enough to get 2 Critical Ops packs. There are still people who have to use apps and websites not related to Games Workshop in order to take part in using these rules. I am really hoping Games Workshop has a plan to alleviate this for 10th, be it an app or something on their own site. If not, we'll just have to rely on the kindness of strangers. But the method of picking a deployment zone and a primary mission that affects both players has kept Kill Team very exciting. So I feel 10th will continue to benefit from this function. Also, it seems the focus for secondary missions is based on whether or not you are playing attacker or defender. There is no information on faction-specific secondaries, a bit of a difference from both 9th and Kill Team if that is the direction they go. I'm actually okay with it. Kill Team recently moved to limiting the potential faction side missions to avoid some of the teams easily scoring all of their side points. This feels like the next step in this approach. Also, the decks of cards approach feels like a good way to expand and change gameplay by simply releasing seasonal updates through new decks. Good luck to all my listeners planning to get their hands on these. May the pre-order gods shine on you that day. These were all the major announcements for me. Seeing that the game is expanding its strength and toughness functions is pretty cool. I was super happy when I came back to see that 9th moved away from armor value on tanks. The argument over whether or not the lower armor side was visible to a heavy weapon. So obnoxious. And now, seeing that tanks and potentially other things are going to have higher toughness values and guns are going to see skyrocketing strength values. Man, I can only imagine what the stats on my Knight Tyrant are gonna be. They also touched on how cover will work. Seems pretty straightforward, minor adjustments here and there. I did notice that they assigned an increase to armor pen on weapon fire from 6 inches up from a vantage point. As always, 40k and other tabletop strategy games are best when not played on an empty parking lot map. Good to see the battlefield still has a modicum of sway over the game's pacing. All in all, really happy with what I've seen so far. Channel-wise, I'll be trying my best to rapidly and effectively get you all some videos to cover the how-tos of 10th, going down some thoughts and team overviews. My friend group will probably try and get some small battles together for battle reports going forward as well. Again, Kill Team is still a major gathering point for us. The faster-paced games and a system of back-and-forth unit activation have been what we wanted out of a tabletop strategy game for quite some time. Either way, it's all for the enjoyment of the gamble of a dice roll. It's why we're all here, right? Thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel and want more tabletop content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and maybe make a sacrifice to the algorithm gods by tapping the like as well. What do you think of what has been revealed for 10th so far? Believe me, I get it. In systems like these that change all the time, some people can get upset when things they felt comfortable with suddenly change and make them have to alter their strategies and ideas into something they might not like. But please, keep it classy in the comments. And know that I also have a community Discord you can join in the description below. We tend to enjoy talking about tabletop games and such. When I go live on Twitch with painting and other things, I usually announce it there as well. I am Kimmerix, and I'll see you in the next one.